In the United States, you have this phrase that police officers use when they arrest someone. It's not only in the United States, each country has its version of it, but it goes like this. They come to you, they grab you, and put you in handcuffs, and they tell you, let's say your name is Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I don't know, Smith, let's say your name is Jeffrey Smith. Jeffrey Smith, you're under arrest for the felony X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z is whatever felony you committed. Hereby you're arrested for, and you have the right to remain silent because everything you say can and will be used against you before a court of law. Now, we know that phrase. Did any of your peers tell you or inform you why they have to mention this? Before we continue, let me explain something about civil and common law. Civil law comes from Latin civilius, which refers to civilians, the urban population. Civil law is based on established patterns and cycles that have been codified in black ink. So the policies to keep the population in patterns and cycles is documented in black ink. That's what we call laws. And if a law decides the basis of a society, we call it a constitution. For example, the United States has a codified collective agreement called the U.S. Constitution. And based on that, you have the state constitutions. And in the state constitutions, you have laws. And then you have federal laws that are based on the collective agreement called the U.S. Constitution. So both civil law as well as common law is based on codified policies that are documented in black ink. So where does civil law and common law differ? I mean, where's the difference? It comes down to this. Civil law is based on the Greek temple, where you give homage to the gods. Common law is based on Greek theater, where people are entertained. Now, this is a very big difference. It may appear to be similar, but it's not. In a Greek temple, you have prescribed rituals, and any violation of those rituals is punished. You're violated because you don't give proper validation to the gods. So it's the gods that are central. The people are not that important. It's about the gods being happy, the gods being satisfied. That's why in civil law, you have this Nephilim entity that they call Lady Justice. Now, in civil law, which is based on research and what works in the long run to keep peace in a community, you have some basic rights that you can call upon. One of those is the right to citizenship. When you reside in a jurisdiction that's presided by a court, in that jurisdiction that's presided by that court, you have the right to act as a civilian and to demand things from that jurisdiction. That's called citizenship. There are obligations on your part attached to it, but you have basic rights because the system needs to offer you something that's good in order to keep you trapped. That's civil law. In common law, that's based on Greek theater, is about keeping the population at ease. So there are codified policies, but those codified policies are based on the collective reactions of the people. So there is no central deity or Greek god that's being worshipped. Even though common law is also about beast worship with Apollo, but in common law, the people are placed at the center. That's why in common law, you have a jury. Think about it like this. When you went to the Greek temple in ancient times, you had the priest, you had the magistrate, you had the civil servants, you had the in statues of the Greek gods, and you had to give offerings. That was it. You come there to give veneration. In the Greek theater, you came with friends, family, and you watched a play. And at the end of the play, not with all plays, but after the end of it, the public had the option to decide who was the winner, who was the loser. In the gladiator fights in Rome, it went so far that the public decided who would die and who was allowed to live. Thumbs up means the individual can live, thumbs down, the individual has to die. So you give the common people a sense of power to keep them at ease. The Romans called it bread and circuses. So common law is based on bread and circuses. So let me give an example how this works out. Let's say a woman is raped. That's a grievous crime. The community is hurt by it. She's hurt, the community is hurt. She now will have to recover from this sexual harm that's done onto her. And now the population is upset because of what happened. And when the population is upset, it will lead to rage, it will lead to bitterness, and it will escalate. So, under a common law jurisdiction, the legal officers come together and they realize, okay, the people are upset. What worked in the past? And then they will look into the past and realize, when we go back till 100 years, 5 times it happened in the community that a woman was raped and they chopped the balls off of the guy that did it and they beat them all up. They left him behind to bleed. Often, I'm saying in the majority of the cases, the man bled to death. So the legal officers decide and then say, okay, that's what we're going to do. So you have the prosecutor that prosecutes the individual as in a ritual, just like in a theater you have a play, everyone has a role. And when the individual is found guilty by the jury, which is a selection of the population, now the judge sides with the jury. There are times he can go against it, but often he will side with the jury. And now they will chop the balls off of the guy that did it and they will beat him up publicly. The people are at ease. In a civil law jurisdiction, when this happens, the legal officers come together and say, okay, a woman was raped. This is not what we want to have in our community. What happens? Then you'll have a prosecution team assigned to prosecute the case, but you'll have an investigation team to figure out what happened and what led to the crime. And then, when it's figured out, you'll have a trial where evidence is considered. And then the judge will decide what works best for the community so that the gods are at ease. You see, it's quite different. In one, there's common law, which is based on Greek theater. It's the appetite for vengeance of the community that's appeased. In civil law, it's the stability of the community that's important. So, in a common law jurisdiction, there is an accusative regime in which the party that gains the favor of the public wins, and the public is represented by the jury. In a civil law jurisdiction, there's an inquisitory system in which research is done to figure out how to stabilize the community. So yes, also in civil law jurisdictions you have jurisprudence in which they will check what worked in the past, but with civil law they go back to the basic values that secure the well-being and the well-functioning as well as the sanity of the community. Now, why did I explain all of this? What does this have to do with your right to remain silent? Realize that in an accusatory system, you are told you're innocent until proven guilty. But in practice, that's not how it goes. In practice, when the population is upset, they need to entertain the population with a trial. And by entertaining the population with a trial, they ease some of the lust for vengeance as within the people. The vengeance doesn't have to be from the victims. It can just be the people are upset, they're angry at society, and now that a crime happened, they will use that as an excuse to lose themselves by attacking others. So the population needs to be appeased. So when you are arrested by the police officer, whether you committed a crime or not doesn't matter. The role of the police officer, he functions as an extension of the prosecution team. Remember, it's an accusatory system. So he is the long arm or the extension of the accuser. So you're being accused. So if you respond or react to the accusation, you are validating the fact they're accusing you. So by you remaining silent, you're making plain, I don't comply with this. When you remain silent and they later convict you, you can always say, I never agreed to this. Why? Because the common law system is based on Greek theater, in which they scapegoat one individual. Whether the individual is guilty or not doesn't matter. They scapegoat someone to appease the others. That itself is a crime. And often innocent people are convicted, and there are even innocent people that receive the death penalty. Because the purpose is to appease the people, not what actually works in the best interest of the people. So, by remaining silent, you are now accusing the accusatory system. Well, not really accusing, but you are making plain, I do not comply with this black magic. That's what you're doing. And for the black magic to be effective on population, your consent for the black magic is needed. So when you remain silent, the black magic loses its strength. But they must offer you the option not to comply with it. In a civil law jurisdiction, you also have the right to remain silent. But there, if you remain silent, it is because you demand a proper investigation and you demand your side to be heard also. So the approach is different. In a civil law jurisdiction, the police is part of the investigation team. If they have to arrest someone, they are an extension of the investigation. The prosecution will prosecute, the investigation team will investigate, and then the judge, sometimes they allow a jury, sometimes not. The judge is going to see, okay, this is the investigation. The judge will be part of the investigation also, in the sense that the judge will follow the case to see what happened. When a court case comes, the judge will make a decision based on the codified policies to see what works for the community. And when the judge or judges realize that this case will have too many consequences, they will shut down the prosecution. They will dismiss the case. Now, dismissing cases also happens in common law jurisdictions, but there they dismiss a case because it may expose the accusatory foundation of the system. In civil law jurisdictions, they tend to dismiss cases when it will further destabilize the community. So it's important for you to understand this difference. And I took a quarter of an hour to explain it to you. And I will link this to the spiritual, because the legal systems of this world are pagan, so they are spiritual. Both civil law jurisdictions as well as common law jurisdictions, they are both pagan. They are both centered around Apollo, but worshipping the beast. So white supremacy is inherent in this system. So it's devil worship at the end of the day. But the devil worship must do some good for the population, which implies taking away or removing people that cause harm. They have to do something that's good for the population to keep them trapped in that fear construct called society, or else it wouldn't work. So this right to remain silent is a spiritual thing. And I am telling you now, believer, because I'm not talking to worldly people, believer, you have the right to remain silent in the presence of familiar spirits. Or better said, I would say you have a duty to remain silent. Let me explain why. In a common law jurisdiction, the police, or the cops, are an extension of the accusation. In a civil law jurisdiction, the cops are part of the investigation. But in both cases, there are agents that express the will of a group of people behind the scenes. In the same way, evil spirits act. They, behind the scenes, have a collective agreement that they want to keep the human species away from serving God. So now, the evil spirits need to come with a dualistic way of thinking to force down the throats of the masses. Just like in the Greek legal system, you have common law and civil law. Common law was used to appease the British tribes and the tribes within the Roman Empire that lived far away from Rome, and civil law was used to maintain the population under control throughout the rest of the empire, mainly people that lived in urban areas. So, in this Greek system, you have duality. Common law, civil law. The evil spirits also come with duality in various ways. So, they come with accusation and with investigation. So, let me give an example. Let's say your name is James, and you're from Ghana, and your relatives are all in poverty. There is a spirit of poverty haunting your relatives. You moved to the United States, you finished college, and you're away from the poverty that haunts them. But you being free from this bondage will not benefit evil spirits, because that will provoke people to think that things can be different. Evil spirits want people to remain stuck. So now you will have accusing spirits that will come to your workplace, and they will use some of your coworkers to accuse you of something. It can be something simple as you're always late, or you talk too much, or whatever. The evil spirits will use them, when possible, to accuse you of something. And then you think, why is this individual accusing me of this? You are likely to defend yourself, to set things straight. And I'm telling you now, don't do it. Just remain at ease, examine the situation, and walk away. You have the right to remain silent. The evil spirits don't have the right to use human beings to accuse you. They have no right to be in the earthly realm to begin with. They're here because they're cast out of heaven. And those other spirits were Nephilim shouldn't even exist. So, when evil spirits through other people accuse you, it's to draw you back into a self-destructive pattern. And then you have evil spirits that will come with an investigation. They know worldly people are obsessed with control. So then evil spirits will send people your way to control you, because those people have control issues, so they will likely project this onto you. So this is an inverted accusation in which the people get close to you just to get a hold on you. They don't know why they want to control you, but it's evil spirits behind the scenes pushing them. They have control issues, that's them, and evil spirits are using those control issues to get a hold on you. So you may have someone that suddenly begins to ask you all kinds of questions. For example, what you want to do in the future, or what your plans are, or how you perceive some societal issues. You may think it's just a common human conversation about things that matter in the human community or in society, but when you look at the context, you'll notice that the questions are mainly aimed at you and in figuring out whether you will move forward or not. Then you know that 9 out of 10 times that individual is inspired by evil spirits to ask you those questions. So in both cases, it's evil spirits using human agents to throw you back into a self-destructive pattern or cycle. Just like with a police officer, you have the right to remain silent. In this case, I would say you are obliged as a believer to remain silent or just to walk away, because anytime you give in to an accusation by evil spirits or you comply with an investigation by evil spirits, you are sucked into a self-destructive cycle. You don't see the evil spirits, but you see the human beings and you experience human beings. So I'm not telling you to just ignore other people and do all of that because that will backfire against you. What I'm telling you is pay attention to every interaction you have with other people. Once you sense that something is off in an interaction, then you're right, something is off. Look beyond the human being you're involved with. Pray and ask the Holy Spirit to reveal unto you what's going on, what's the spiritual agenda behind it. Because understand, all human relationships are either backed up by the supernatural or by the paranormal. So either someone walks by faith in the power of the Holy Spirit, and therefore the Holy Spirit is the one behind his or her human relationships, or someone does not walk by faith, and therefore evil spirits have a hold on that individual. It's one of the two. And evil spirits will always use agents. Those are human beings that are not aware evil spirits are using them. Evil spirits will always use agents to either accuse you or to put you under investigation. Learn to laugh off both investigations, paranormal investigations, and paranormal accusations. Learn to shake it all off you with a smile, and you're not obliged to respond nor react. You're not. Experienced attorneys would tell you that if police comes to arrest you, to just comply with the arrest because they are entitled, as long as they wear their uniform, to use violence to make you comply, so you comply, but you don't tell them anything. You can just tell them, I want my lawyer. Experienced attorneys will tell you this, because experienced attorneys know how the Greek system works. And they know whether you are under a civil law jurisdiction or a common law jurisdiction. They know that anything you tell the police out of a good heart, because you want to comply with justice, can and will be used against you. Or it can be used in such a way to frame you in the negative daylight. So even when you win the court case and you're free, what you said is framed in such a way that you are still condemned. Because court cases are political. It's political and economic. People will say, well, Rashid, the political branch and the judicial branch are two separate branches. That's what we were taught in high school. Let's look at reality. The legal system is political. Political motives play a role all the time. That is why, in some countries, when an individual with a skin color commits a crime, they are punished twice or thrice as hard as someone without a skin color that committed a similar crime. You can have one guy that sold drugs on the streets and he gets 4 months and he only serves 3 months. You have a black guy from the hood doing it and he gets 10 years. What is that? It is because in that society, blacks are seen as scapegoats, and those that get along in society, they agree with the scapegoating of blacks. So to preserve the scapegoating, because the society is based on the scapegoating, they need to assault blacks as much as possible to keep them traumatized. Because when people are traumatized, they develop mental issues. So by keeping a lot of black people mentally ill, by oppressed regimes, society that's based on scapegoating blacks can feel vindicated, and people get narcissistic relief. And when people have narcissistic relief, they tend to be at ease. So it's about keeping the population at ease. That's why the racism is used and expressed in the legal system. All court cases are political. Don't let anyone fool you. Now, this video is not about court cases, but I'm using the legal system as a reference point to how evil spirits work. Any human involvement you will have with another human being, either the Holy Spirit sponsors it, so he supports it, or the Holy Spirit will tolerate it to teach you something, and then the Holy Spirit will remove it. Because if a relationship, I don't care whether it's a sexual relationship, aka a marriage, or whether it's a business relationship, or just friendship, or family ties, whatever type of human relationship it is, if it's not sponsored by the Holy Spirit, it is because it's not safe. It doesn't glorify Christ. And if it doesn't glorify Christ, it will not benefit anyone in the long run. So, believer, there are relationships that are sponsored by the Holy Spirit, and there are relationships that are tolerated for a while by the Holy Spirit. That's how it goes with the believer. Those without Christ, they don't have the guidance of the Holy Spirit. So I'm not even addressing them. I'm addressing believers here. There are relationships that are sponsored by the Holy Spirit, and there are relationships that the Holy Spirit tolerates. The Holy Spirit will not always reveal unto you which relationship He tolerates. The Holy Spirit knows everything, and He will not share everything with you because you can't handle everything. Your brains are not meant to handle everything. You're designed to rely on Him. So when the Holy Spirit has enough of a relationship and He ends it, don't force your way back into that relationship, because it cannot work, because it's the Holy Spirit, God Himself, that destroyed that relationship. Never rebuild something God destroyed. Never. When a relationship is sponsored by the Holy Spirit, and let's say Satan comes to mess with the relationship, when you walk by faith, you will overcome that messing around of Satan very easily. But if a relationship was tolerated by the Holy Spirit, and Satan comes along, Satan will come along to keep that relationship going. Not destroy it, because that relationship is an asset for Satan. So when the Holy Spirit destroys that relationship, you have to do a lot of effort to be involved with another individual. And often when you are involved, it lasts for only a day or two. It's because it's God that destroyed that relationship. So understand this, believer. You have the right to remain silent in the presence of familiar spirits. You do. You don't have to comply with their demonic operations. And when it comes to human beings, because it's human beings they use, examine the human beings that are involved with you. Really examine them. And when you see that there are human beings used to trap you into self-destruction, remain kind, remain polite, remain at peace, and excuse yourself in a loving manner, so those human beings won't feel rejected nor offended. Now, if they choose to feel offended because they want to control you, that's on them. They can just remove yourself from them, because they shouldn't even want to control you to begin with. But if that's not the case, if they are on good terms with you, which often is the case, then just remove yourself in a polite way from those relationships. Draw back, lower contact, and move on. You are not obliged to speak to familiar spirits. Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.